Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into what might just be the next generation of the internet, Web 3.0. And specifically, we're going to talk about a piece of the puzzle that's absolutely crucial but often overlooked, distributed storage. We rely on the web for practically everything, but what if the very foundation it's built on is, well, a little shaky?
And that's really the big question we need to start with, isn't it? We've got these incredible, powerful services, social media, cloud storage, you name it, but they all run on this surprisingly fragile, centralized model. Getting to the bottom of this is key to understanding why so many brilliant people are trying to build something entirely new.
Exactly. So to really get a handle on where the web is heading, you've got to look at where it's been. Let's dig into the web's current foundation and see why more and more people are saying it's starting to show some pretty serious cracks. This timeline probably feels pretty familiar. We kicked things off in the 90s with Web 1.0, the read-only web. Just think of it like a huge digital library. You could look at stuff, but not really touch it. Then, Web 2.0 came along and completely changed the game. Suddenly, it was read-write. We could all create, share, and interact. This is the internet of Facebook, YouTube, and Google. But now, we're standing on the edge of Web 3.0, which is all about read, write, own. And that last part, own, is a massive shift.
So what's actually wrong with the web we use every day? Well, for starters, it's all about centralization. Your data, my data, all of it lives in these giant company-owned silos. That creates a huge single point of failure, making these companies massive targets for hackers and surveillance. But the biggest issue might be the lack of ownership. I mean, we create all the content that makes these platforms valuable, but we don't own our data, and we for sure don't own the platform itself. Plus, trying to scale this model globally is getting incredibly expensive and complicated.
Okay, so if the old way of doing things is broken, what's the fix? Well, this leads us straight to the vision for a read, write, own internet. It's a whole new architecture, and it's designed from the ground up with decentralization and user control in mind.
And that's the million-dollar question, right? If centralization is the bad guy in this story, where do you go from there? The alternative isn't just a small tweak. It's a completely different way of thinking about how we store, access, and control information online.
And here it is. This is the core promise of Web 3.0. It's a decentralized web, and the engine powering it is blockchain technology. The two big ideas here are direct, unmediated transactions and true user ownership. So instead of needing a giant corporation to sit in the middle of everything we do, Web 3.0 uses technology to let us interact directly and securely with each other.
When you put them side by side, the difference is just staggering. Web 2.0, everything connects back to a central server. Companies own the data, and we have to trust those companies to do the right thing. Web 3.0 flips that script entirely. The architecture is peer-to-peer. We, the users, own our data, and the trust model is trustless. Now, that sounds a little weird, I know, but all it means is that trust is baked right into the network's code, so you don't need to rely on some big, fallible company anymore.
So, what's the magic that makes all this possible? Well, it's blockchain. At its heart, a blockchain is just a new kind of database. It's a shared, unchangeable ledger that lets us record transactions directly between people. And it does it in a way that's efficient, verifiable, and permanent. It's the technology that finally lets us cut out the middleman.
Okay, but this is where it gets really interesting, because this new model creates a whole new problem. A blockchain is great for keeping a record of transactions, but what about all the stuff? The actual websites, the videos, the memes, all of it.
And this right here is where a lot of people get tripped up. A blockchain is incredibly secure, but it is not a hard drive. It's designed to be a ledger, not a place to store terabytes of video files. So if we're serious about building a truly decentralized web, we've got a pretty massive data storage problem to solve.
That's exactly it. Trying to cram large files onto a blockchain is just wildly inefficient and unbelievably expensive. So to make the vision of Web 3.0 a reality, you need another critical piece of the puzzle working right alongside the blockchain. You need a decentralized storage layer.
And that brings us to this new storage layer. We're talking about a whole new class of technologies built specifically to solve this data problem and to lay the foundation for a web that's truly distributed from top to bottom.
So let's talk about one of the biggest names in this space, the Interplanetary File System, or IPFS. And its goal is, frankly, mind-bogglingly ambitious, to connect every single computing device on the planet with one unified file system. The easiest way to wrap your head around it is to think of it like one giant global BitTorrent swarm, where everyone is sharing data directly with everyone else.
Okay, so if there's no central server, no google.com to point your browser to, how in the world do you find anything? In the old web, you ask for a file at a specific location, like an address. But in a peer-to-peer world, that kind of address just doesn't exist.
IPFS has a really clever three-step solution. First, instead of asking where is this file, it asks what is this file. It uses something called content addressing, where every file gets a unique, permanent address based on its contents, using a special cryptographic hash. Second, it uses a distributed hash table, or DHT. Just think of it like a massive, shared phone book that isn't stored in any one place. Everyone on the network holds a tiny piece of it. Together, they can look up a file's unique address and find out which peers are storing it. And finally, your computer just grabs the file directly from those peers. No central server needed.
Now, under the hood, the way IPFS organizes all this data is with a structure called a Merkle DAG. It sounds complicated, but the idea is pretty cool. Imagine a big file is broken into smaller chunks. Each chunk gets its own unique hash. Then, you hash those hashes together to create a new hash, and you keep going until you have one single root hash that represents the whole file. This creates a web of data that is basically tamper-proof. If you change even one single bit in one tiny chunk, that final root hash will be completely different. It's a super efficient way to check that your data is correct and to manage different versions.
Now, IPFS isn't the only game in town. Another really important technology is Swarm. And the main thing to know about Swarm is that it's Ethereum's native solution for this problem. It is deeply, deeply integrated with the Ethereum blockchain, designed from the very beginning to be the go-to storage layer for all the decentralized apps built on Ethereum.
So while IPFS and Swarm are both aiming for the same goal, decentralized storage, they have some really different philosophies. IPFS is what you'd call blockchain agnostic. It can work with any blockchain, and it relies on a separate system like Filecoin to create incentives for people to store data. Swarm, on the other hand, has those incentives built right in, using the Ethereum network itself. Ultimately, you can think of it like this. IPFS wants to be a brand new foundational protocol for the entire web, while Swarm is more focused on being the perfect storage layer for the Ethereum ecosystem.
And this quote, I think, really gets to the heart of it. This shift from a centralized web to a decentralized one isn't just some minor technical upgrade. It's about fundamentally rebalancing the scales, giving users more knowledge and more power, which could have huge ripple effects across our daily lives.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. We've seen the problems with the old web, and we've seen the powerful new building blocks for the new one, blockchain for trust, and systems like IPFS and Swarm for data. The real question now is, are we actually going to use these incredible tools to build a web that's not just faster or more resilient, but one that is finally, truly, owned and operated by the people who use it?
And that's all we have for this explainer. If you found this useful and it helped you connect some dots, please do us a favor and like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the tech that is shaping our future. Thanks for watching.